Today, the Defense Department announced another $250 million package of military aid to Ukraine to counter Russia's war on that democratic nation. The United States will send Ukraine artillery, ammunition, air defense capabilities, and anti-tank weapons from existing DoD stockpiles that Congress previously appropriated. But with Republicans in Congress balking at providing any new assistance, the Biden administration may soon be forced to change its support for its embattled ally. Last week, the New York Times reported that Russian President Vladimir Putin has been quietly signaling that he is open to a ceasefire in Ukraine. Now, with Ukraine's counteroffensive stalled in the east, it appears the Biden administration may be privately thinking along the same lines. Politico reports today that, quote, the Biden administration is quietly shifting its focus from supporting Ukraine's goal of total victory over Russia to improving its position in an eventual negotiation to end the war. Such a negotiation could result in Ukraine having to give up most, if not all, of the roughly 20% of its territory currently under Russian occupation. Joining us now, Michael Hirsh, contributing writer at Politico Magazine and columnist at Foreign Policy Magazine. Michael, thank you very much for being here this evening. So is this a change of strategy from the U.S., this talk, change in strategy that you wrote about in Politico? And if so, why now?
Well, it's a shift. There's no question that the Biden administration has been hinting really almost since the beginning of the conflict that eventually it would have to end in some kind of negotiation. The president himself wrote that in a New York Times op-ed back in 2022. But now, because of the holdup in aid, not just from the U.S. Congress, but also the problems in terms of getting an additional $50 billion or so of aid from the European Union, they're starting to think that they need to shift to a defensive posture that can take them through the coming months. And this is also a response to the failed counteroffensive that the Ukrainians launched in June, which has been largely stalemated in the East. So they're beginning to think that they need to adjust to these current circumstances by bolstering air defense systems, redeploying forces along the Eastern Front now into more of a defensive posture, and setting up defenses in the north along the border with Belarus, where they can prevent any further aggression by them.
You know, so when the New York Times reported its story on the front page on Sunday about what Putin was saying privately, I had the Ukrainian ambassador to the United States, Oksana Markarova, on my show for her response. Listen to what she had to say when I asked her if a ceasefire would be something Ukraine would agree to.
Whatever, lies Mr. Putin would like to spread, we should listen to his actual signals. And he keeps bombing Ukrainian cities on a daily basis. They might want an operational pause, which they have been, trying to get in order to get more weapons from their friends from Iran and North Korea and others. If they really want peace, there is a very simple solution to that. They should stop their aggressive war, get out from Ukraine, and the peace will return to Ukraine the next day. He wants to destroy all Ukraine and not only Ukraine. So let's not get fooled by whatever, rumors he would like to spread.
And so, Michael, very, very tough words, very definitive words. And of course, she would say that, and President Zelensky would say that publicly. But would they negotiate?
Right now, they're not giving any indication they'll negotiate. And I asked a Biden administration official about that New York Times report, and his response was there are no serious discussions that he is aware of. There may be hints. This may be, a kind of back channel offering by Putin, but there's nothing really on the record. There's no indication there's going to be any negotiation anytime soon. Most experts believe that Putin will want to wait until he sees who wins the U.S. presidential election in November, because Donald Trump obviously has been much more sympathetic to Putin's aims than the current president. So no one expects that there's going to be any negotiation soon, nor is there any expectation that if there is a negotiation, either side is going to give in very much. I mean, the idea, obviously one sympathizes with what the ambassador said, but the idea that Russia is simply going to give up and turn tail and retreat entirely from eastern Ukraine is not realistic. So there's an expectation that there's going to have to be a negotiated ceasefire or a truce of some kind. And it may not come for a year or so. But the point is that both sides, and in particular the Ukrainians, who I'm writing about this week in Politico, that they are posturing themselves to be in the strongest possible position when such a negotiation comes.
Michael Hirsh, thank you very much for your time tonight.
Thank you.